practices. And so we see these problematic attitudes everywhere. You might experience them yourself in how funding is awarded, or how decisions are made, how knowledge is generated, whose knowledge counts, whose opinion matters. So we know the problem, okay? We know that there are problems around these attitudes and practices that have been held by global North actors, but also often internalized by some in the global South as well. So we know that the sector needs to change. What we don't know is how to do that. And what we also don't hear is enough of the voices from those affected by these problems. Right now, and it's quite ironic, right now, the conversation about decolonizing is being monopolized by those in the global North. You might have heard that yourself, but there are plenty of organizations in the UK, in Europe, in the US, talking about the need to decolonize our attitudes and practices. What we don't hear is actually the voices of those who actually experience that unequal relationship, that unequal power. And so with WACSI, we decided that we wanted to open up a space to allow primarily global South actors, but also their allies, to share their perspectives, challenges, and aspirations for how they think the sector needs to decolonize from your perspective, from where you are standing. Really, the conversation has to be led by you. So there's a rebalancing that is necessary in the sector right now, so that we don't hear so much of the voices from the global North, but actually allow this to be centered on those in the majority world or global South. So I want to go back to that, the definition I mentioned to you before. I said it was about dismantling neo-colonial attitudes and practices. So it's this act of sort of, deconstructing and dismantling the problems. But decolonizing, for us at least at Peace Direct, is more than that. It's about rebuilding agency and power. And it's about a sort of reclaiming of power. And I like this word that has been in my head for some time, sort of restitution. And the definition of restitution is the restoration of something lost or stolen to its proper owner. So I just want to repeat that. The restitution is the restoration of something lost or stolen to its proper owner. And so decolonizing has two sides to it: the dismantling of these power imbalances and these attitudes. So we have to dismantle before we rebuild, but then we need to rebuild. And so for us, decolonizing is an act of restitution, an act of reclaiming power. And that's what we hope our colleagues and you here around the virtual table can help lead that. So we're really looking forward to a conversation with you today. I will be as a sort of observer, so I'll be handing over to Nancy in a minute. We don't have a very fixed agenda because we want this to be an organic conversation. And this is the first in a series of conversations. So please don't think that you need to have everything discussed today. This is the first in what we hope will be a series of conversations over the course of months or even beyond, so that we can really start to drill deep into where these problems lie, how they need to be dismantled, and how we need to reclaim power for those in the majority world or global South. And that's in your hands. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you taking a really active role in this, and for you to be able to tell policymakers, INGOs, global North actors what is needed. So thank you for listening to me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Nancy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Really good to hear your voice and to help us position ourselves on why we are having this conversation. And it's also come back to the purpose of this space, because we are creating the space for us to own this space, for us to lead the conversation, like Dylan said. So we don't really have any structure. We don't really have any topics of what we want to talk about. We want us to shape this conversation moving forward. We want to use the space for us to share our perspective, but to talk about some of our struggles the challenges about the whole conversation about decolonizing the sector. But then what is our aspiration as organizations that is really being affected by the whole conversation of or the whole work on in the decolonizing agenda? But at the end of the day, we want to shape the decolonizing efforts of the region. We don't want it to be shaped by INGOs. We don't want it to be shaped by organizations in the global north, but we want to lead and we want to shape this agenda. So that is why we are having this space. And basically, we want us to own this space for us to support and lead and shape the narrative. So in our planning on how we want to use this space, this is how we picture the day, how we can spend the few hours today to look like. So at the beginning, and yesterday, we sent a Mentimeter link. We wanted to get an appreciation of what you think decolonization is. What are your struggles? What are your challenges of decolonization to you? So we will be glad to go back to that conversation. We want to distill from us, what is decolonization to us? What are the topics that we want to talk about? What are the things that we want to focus our conversation on? So we'll be co-creating that today. And doing that, we will be going into breakout groups and then going more deeper to discuss each issue in more details, identifying the things that we want to focus our conversation on. But then coming back also to discuss how we want to take this forward. How many times do we want to have this conversation? Who do we need to be in the room to have this conversation? Do we want to talk about it ourselves? Do we want to, at a point, invite our funders, our INGOs to be in the space to listen to our voices? How do we want to drive this agenda? So we will be discussing all of this in the breakout group, and then we'll come back and then strategize what we want to do next. Because like I said, we are trying to create a community where we are leading the discussion of decolonization. So this is how today will look like. It's not really structured. We are going to define the conversation as we move forward, and then we are going to plan how we want to have this conversation regularly or more frequently, and then also expand or drive the agenda that we want to drive. So that is why we are here. And I hope that you are here because you also believe in the purpose or in the goal that we have to lead the conversation on decolonization, because the whole system, the whole colonial or the structure of international aid is affecting us. So we are supposed to be with the one leading the conversation of how we want to change the structure, how we want the decolonization efforts to be like. So that is why we are here, and we are so happy that you made the time to spend this time with us to have this conversation together. I will want to hand it over to my colleague, Mabel. She will take us back to some of the reflections that we started having before the call. There was a Mentimeter that was shared. So Mabel will take us through what is coming out of the Mentimeter conversations that we shared. And then we will also hear from you. If you didn't get the chance to share your idea ahead of the meeting, you can also get a chance to also make your input. And then we co-create something that we want to discuss moving forward. So Mabel, over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Nancy. And thank you so much, Dylan, for simplifying decolonization the way you did. It's usually, if we look at the results from the Mentimeter, the first question we asked was what decolonization means to people. And if you look at the results, you see that some people don't even know what decolonization is. So in as much as the conversations are going on, there's also this question on, do we even have a common understanding of what decolonization is? And in the cases where we do, there's another question on how do we decolonize? I'm sure Dylan also raised that question up when he was defining what decolonization is. So in terms of our understanding on decolonization, we had issues around addressing power inequities. We had issues around understanding the mechanisms around power structures. So we are seeing the issues of power coming up. Removing the influence of the Western world on African development, breaking the existing colonial system. We have issues around enlightenment of a people who were once enslaved. And I remember that Dylan also defined decolonization as restitution, and where he mentioned that it is the restoration of something lost or stolen to its proper owner. So when we look at the responses, we see that they all align with his definition. We also have, it's about challenging the dominant Western systems. So there's a lot of talk around the dominant Western system, the influence of the West, the West, the West, the West. So there's a need for us to have these conversations like Nancy mentioned. We see to stop imposing a Western idea. We see mindset reawakening of real identity. So going back to our history, we see making a subtle systemic mindset visible. So there's a need for the mindset change. And somebody says gaining independence. We also have deconstructing the status quo, knowledge systems, framing, concepts, theories, and all of this existing infrastructure that we use. Somebody says freedom. Then it would also be nice for those of us who are present here who did not fill out this Mentimeter, would also like to get your idea on what decolonization is. But let me just go to the second question, then we'll come back and retake both questions. So we also try to find out what some of the main challenges were when it comes to decolonizing the sector. That's for those who understand what decolonization is and those who have started the process. What are some of the challenges that you face in the sector? Because this is also the space for us to see how we can address these challenges. So there were issues around the capacity of local organizations. There's non-acceptance of the new system, lack of support from the ruling government. And we also have issues on the idea on how to do it. So this has come up very strongly. Even from the definition, we realize that some people are not even aware of what decolonization is. Then we also had issues on, somebody says old habits die hard. So there's the issue on change, the resistance to change, which also comes in the form of gatekeeping. Then we had issues around financial resources, the lack of genuine commitment. So yes, some people are engaged in decolonization, but the question is, are they doing it because they have to, or they are doing it because there's a need to do it? So this was also raised. Then there's an issue around resistance from funders, trust issues. There are challenges in decolonization because of trust issues. We have resistance to change again, changing mindsets and outdated laws, the power relationships, and brainwashing. So when we look at these challenges, we realize that most of our organizations were all going through these, but in different ways. So one of the reasons why we are also here today is to be able to craft all of these ideas and put them into major thematic areas that we can subsequently address. Because if you look at some of these responses, you realize that there are similarities, even though the words, the context might be different, but there are a lot of similarities. So I would want to give the space to the participants. For those of us who were not able to fill out this form, we can take about 3 responses for the first question. In your own words, based on the introduction and what we've all heard this morning, would like you to just give us maybe your own understanding of what decolonization is. I know that usually we have challenges because people are usually afraid. I don't want to be the first. I don't want to be the first. But like Nancy mentioned, this is an open space. So if you're not comfortable raising your hand, you can put your response in the chat. But we would like to hear your voices. That's why we are here. We want to hear your voices. And because I'm sharing my screen, it might be challenging for me to see those who are raising their hands. But if you have a response, you can. Okay. Alan, thank you. Alan, please, you can go ahead. What's your understanding of decolonization? Please, if you're not talking, kindly mute yourself so that we can hear each other clearly. Thank you very much. Yes, Alan, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. To some extent, I'm sort of an outsider in the continent. I've been here 50 odd years or so. And one of the things that there's a good Malarian friend of mine who passed away, who was a master of proverbs, and he said, "A stranger brings a sharper blade." And I think that decolonization is about reinscribing what was there and oppressed, and reinscribing into society, to African societies, its own indigenous origins, its own values, its own knowledges. And restitution is maybe a sort of a one way of thinking about it, but I actually don't find that very deep and reactive. I prefer it to become much more from what is the rootedness that we need to recapture, that we need to understand ourselves, about ourselves, and reintegrate that into the societies that essentially have been imposed on us. So I go much more for reinscribing indigeneities, knowledges, values, systems, relationships, than restitution. I just don't think that captures the depth of what decolonization should be. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Alan. Based on Alan's submission, we realized that there are a lot of rewords. When Dylan was talking, he said restitution, which is the restoration of something lost. And he said we can break down decolonization into dismantling and rebuilding. So there's the reword again. And Alan has also talked about being reactive. He talked about the ability to recapture what was initially ours. He talked about the need to reintegrate, and he talked about relationships. So when we look at the context, there's a lot of rewords. And these rewords mean that there was something that existed before, and there's a need to go back to those things. There was our history that existed before, and there's a need for us to go back to our history. Thank you so much, Alan. Please, is there any other person? Yeah, Madeleine, please go ahead. Hi, Madeleine. Okay, yeah, while we're waiting for Madeleine, Mamadou, please go ahead. I see you've already switched on your camera and you're just waiting. Please go ahead.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I am Mamadou Ba from FANT Sierra Leone, an NGO in Freetown, Sierra Leone. So for me, what I really understand about decolonization in the context of an NGO or of our working space, I think we're thinking about the discovery. I will break it down to some different aspects, which is the discovery, dreaming, commitment, and actions. In most times in our spaces that we're working as an NGO, we should always try to dream and commit ourselves, in whatever we do, in order for us to fit, our context or our workspace. And also must be active, So that's what I think.
Thank you very much, Mamadou. Mamadou says is that discovery and commitments to actions. And it goes back to the question on tokenism. Are we actually committed, or we are just doing this because we're hearing other people do that? So I see, please rename your devices so that I can actually call out your names. I see Samsung Galaxy, but I don't know who that is. And while waiting for the person to rename, I'll go to Sinikiwe. Sinikiwe, please, your understanding of decolonization, then we go to some of the challenges that we are experiencing in the sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Mabel, for that. I think for me, it actually boils into withdrawal of influence by the global north. It could be withdrawal of influence politically, socially, and economically, in a way of ensuring that we attain our independence. It could be in the humanitarian or in the NGO sector. So it generally means allowing or actually, enforcing our indigenous influence in our decisions or in our decision-making processes. That's how I look into it. If you look at it, somebody can think maybe it's actually political because you're talking about decolonization, But I think for us, in looking into our sphere of work, it goes beyond, the notion of the politics. I think it also looks into our social and also economic, means of independence. That's how I understand it. So it means that you are withdrawing that influence from the global north in all streams, of life, politically, socially, and also economically, to ensure that we attain our own independence in the way we manage our organizations. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Sinikiwe. Sinikiwe also came in with another real word. We are regaining. So there's a need for the withdrawal of influence from the Western world, and there's a need for us to regain our independence. Thank you very much. In as much as we would like the conversations to continue, we are running with time, and I would just like to take maybe some other 3 participants on sharing your experiences when it comes to decolonization. What are some of the challenges that you face in the sector? What are some of the challenges that you face as an organization, as an individual, irrespective? Yes, right. Habakkuk, Peter. Oh, sorry, Samsung Galaxy, I see you are taking the floor. Please tell us your name because your device is not named. So please just tell us your name before you give us your submission.
Yes, I'm Patrick Pukawa. Yeah, okay. I'm from Sierra Leone.
Welcome, Patrick.
Working with Space Providers Network.
Okay.
Yeah, the question again.
The challenges, some of the challenges that you face when it comes to decolonization.
Well,
I saw your hand
the challenges up. The challenges you face when with decolonization is one, you tend to be independent. You now depend on all the necessary finances. You are free from colonialism. You are an independent somebody, and because you are independent, then you now face some economic constraints. You now face some other hard challenges, environmental and all those other things. You face some challenges of those nature, but purely finances. Finances are challenges that you will face because you have been depending on the colonial powers that colonize you that have been financing you. So moving away from them, like my brother said, moving away from them, withdrawing away from them, one of the challenges that you will face is financial, instability. You will always face financial instability and some of those other things. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think he's trying to make the point on the excessive or over-dependence on finances from donors and from funders. Thank you very much. Yes. Habakkuk,
thank you.
Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Habakkuk from Liberia Quarantine and Sierra Leone, attending the Manuel Review Internet Government Forum. So that implies that I would love to meet up with most of my guys.
Hello, Habakkuk. Please, we can't hear you clearly.
Good morning. I'm Habakkuk. I'm from Liberia. Currently, I'm in Sierra Leone, attending the Manuel Review Internet Governance Forum conference. So basically, when it comes to the decolonization, I think it is a vital issue that has to do with consciousness. It's not just about rebranding, but it's about consciousness. Because we need to go back to the genesis of this problem. Most of the problem comes from the angle of our tertiary education to our upbringing from school to our homes, churches, and whatsoever. So if we want to decolonize Africa, we should think how best we can change the trajectory of how things are being in the Pueblo. From our school system, to our church, to our entertainment, our dress code, and we should prioritize what we want for donors to do for us. We should not, donors should not be dictating to us as what we can provide and what we should provide. We should focus those things we need that can prioritize and show the African culture and heritage instead of us going after what we want.
Okay, thank you so much, Habakkuk. The your line was not very clear, but I think one of the things I picked out was you're talking about at the level of the institutional level, like right from our roots. If we have to address this problem, we have to go back to our roots. And this has come up a couple of times. We are looking at our culture, we are looking at our history. What are the things that we have to seize? What kind of influence does the West have over us? How do we let go of this influence? How do we desist from this influence and exist on our own? Thank you very much. So based on the submissions that we had a very long list of challenges. We sat down as Peace Direct and WACSI and we tried to summarize this into about 5 or 6 different topics, major topics. We know that this would not cover everything, but we are also opening it up for restructuring. If we think that these are not some of the challenges that we are experiencing, or if we think that these are not some of the topics we would like to address, the floor is open. And that's why we will be going into breakout rooms so that we can have these conversations in a more intimate way. So I would just share my screen on the summary of the topics that we were able to come up with so that when we get into the breakout rooms, we can agree on whether these are the topics that are actually a problem in the sector or whether we would want to restructure or change these topics to suit us. So please just give me a minute. Let me share my screen. Please, can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you very much. So
Yes.
as a summary of all the challenges that we raised during the filling out of the Mentimeter, these are some of the points we were able to capture as major points. So the first one was resistance to change. And it also came up a lot in the conversations. There's a resistance to change because there's the question of, we are saying we want the Western world to let go of power. But the question now is, what happens next? So there's definitely going to be this resistance because people are afraid of what happens after they've let go of their powers. What happens after they've let go of the influence? So there will definitely be this resistance to change. Then there was also the issue around the limited capacity of local organizations. And that is what also influences the over or excessive financial dependence. So some people complain that because their organizations are a little limited in capacity, it gives them room or it opens up doors for them to be over dependent on donors or funders for their sustainability. Then the issue around power dynamics also, which has come up and which keeps coming up. And the issue on the how. So yes, we want to decolonize, but what is the process? How do we go about it? So this space is also for us, those of us who have started the practical part of the decolonization, to come and share our stories so that others can also pick up from there. Those who are struggling with how do we decolonize, we can also pick up from there. And then we also have issues around limited opportunities for Southern organizations. Dylan mentioned it also, that yes, the conversations have been picked up in some parts, but most of them are not led by Southern organizations. Most of them are not led by the majority world. So what do we have to do so that we can be the ones leading and championing these conversations? And the last one is around the lack of genuine commitments, what we are also calling tokenism. I talked about this before. Yes, we want to do decolonization, but the question is, why are we doing it? Are we doing it because we need to, or we are just doing it because every other person is saying that this is what we are talking about? And maybe there's funding opportunities for those who are doing decolonization. And yes, because we want to belong, we think that there is a need for us to be part of the discussion. So these are just some of the major topics which we identified. And if we think that there are some topics that we would want to add, please, you can go ahead and add in the chat section or during your breakout sessions. You can also just come up with some of these topics and we will discuss them during the plenary. So on that note, I would like to hand over to Nancy to continue the conversations. And thank you so much for your contributions. It's actually been lovely listening to you.
Thank you very much, Mabel. Maybe let me get back to us for us to go back and reflect on those topics. Maybe you can reproject it again. For us to have a conversation. These conversations that you want to have, these are the synthesis of what we pulled out of the Mentimeter question that was filled. I know not all of us were able to populate the Mentimeter, so let's now have a conversation. These are some of the synthesis. Are these some of the topics or some of the things that you want to discuss? You want to use this space to talk about? Is there any conversation or any topic that you think is very needed for us to include in this discussion? And I think today is the time for us to agree on this. We can list as many as we want, and then we can now define when we want to have conversation on each of these ones. So let me open the floor for anyone who would like to share. Yes, Moses.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Dylan. You know, as I listen through this, one of the things that really comes to my mind is that we as a sector, are we able to engage in what needs to be decolonized? And that's why we need, I think, to interrogate a little more on the concept of decolonization. In many countries, colonialism is actually much older than the sector, so to say. The formal sectors we know it, the NGO sector. And I mean, in a number of countries, the NGO concept as we know it is a new concept. So, you know, much younger than the colonial concept. And I think we need to understand there. So our lack of understanding or our inability might be that maybe we just do not understand the thing that we are trying to confront. And that's why, you know, as we converse, and I see a little bit of the challenges that emerged from the Mentimeter, that we quickly get drawn into localization. And I wish actually Dylan had even gone ahead and sort of created the distinction between the two, just so that we can actually be very clear. Because we first of all need to understand what is colonial. And, you know, because that varies from country to country. What is colonial in the case of Uganda? We know what is perhaps colonial in the case of Ethiopia that never actually witnessed colonialism. What about, you know, as Dylan said, that this conversation is now having its epicenter in the northern capitals. You know, were they colonized? Not at all, not at all. So I think first of all, for me, we need to get away from the noise of localization. We need to shift the center of gravity from the north to the south. And then we need then to be able to understand the subject around colonialism or coloniality, and then also understand that we're going to give this a contextual flavor, because I mean, I don't know when we're talking of dismantling the neoliberal perspectives and narratives that it is the same across. It may not be the same, you know, because different countries, I think, witness this differently. And then being able to say, how do we do this? It's a mindset thing. We, in the case of Uganda, we think that it's the starting point of decolonization is about our education system, because we are sort of bred like that. We've been born into it. And so when I look at this, what is right now on the screen here, you know, the resistance to change, we have gatekeepers, we limited the capacity of local organizations, you know, the thing of tokenism. You know, if we're not careful, the pendulum is starting to swing towards, you know, localization, and that, oh, if we do this, then we are going to be able to address this issue. And perhaps it is not that. And I think, let me end by saying, for is an act of love. love, especially for those that have faced the brunt of patriarchy, that have, that's what it means, and it needs to be looked at from that, and not looking at it from the surface of.
Sorry, Moses, at a point we were losing your sound, but I think we generally heard you. So one of the key things that you are adding is that we need to understand what is colonial in our context. So let's take that also note that now. So that could be one conversation that we really have to have. How do we define it in our context? Thank you very much. Madeleine, please, over to you.
Yes. Okay. Are you hearing me? I'm here.
Yes. We can hear you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I would want to talk on the how to dismantle colonialism. The first thing I have to say is that I will try to, say about it in two terms. The first is the self-realization. Are we being able to realize whom we are? And the second one is self-actualization. First of all, you realize whom you are, and then you try to actualize whom you are. And how do we achieve this? When you have known whom you are, then you will now talk about whom you have. Again, you talk about what you have. Whom you are, whom you have, what you have. And then if be able to realize all this, now you are like, I'm in Nigeria. If I'm talking about decolonization, I should be able to find out what do I have in my domain. I don't know why I'm not coming up on camera, but then what do I have in my domain? And then how do I utilize this? Because the decolonization will be possible if what you are made of yourself can avail you or can give you what you are going to be in future. And if by the time you have assessed yourself and realize that what you have cannot compete of what your future is going to be, you will now give in continually into colonization. But if we go in ourselves and find out that I have this, I have crude. If I have crude, will I be able to refine it? If I'm able to refine it, okay. But if I have crude and I cannot refine it, then I must source for an upper hand. So this is the first thing we Africans have to look at first before talking about decolonization. And don't forget my point. I said we have to first of all talk about self-realization. Who are we? Can I do this by myself? Then how do I achieve it? If the means of achieving, which is self-actualization, is not there, we cannot run away from it. So I think the development have to start first from our people finding out whom we are. We find out whom we are. Can we do this to ourselves? Can we be able to tackle this? The resources we have, can we utilize it? There I narrow into whom you are, whom you have, what you have. If Africans will be able to find out this about themselves, the idea of decolonization will be perfectly achieved. Thank you very much. These are my humble points.
Thank you very much. They're actually not humble, they're actually powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I think it has been well captured. We should always start from ourselves. Who are we? What do we have? And how do we get there? So that's also one of the things that you talk about. And I think it's also connected. Before we talk about how do we do this, we have to look within. Thank you so much. So I would take the Siniki, your hand, and then we can continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Nancy. I think for me, I want to actually align with the previous Moses who spoke before, maybe because I didn't attend the other meetings, I wanted to find out before I even talk of the major challenges, to say what is causing us now to speak about decolonization. Is it because of the nature of the main attitude within our organization? Because I think for us to actually venture into this conversation, we need to understand the background. Why now? Why are we talking about it? Is it because we think that our donors are influencing the way we manage our organizations? Is it because of the donor requirements? The way we are reporting, the way is that the reason why we are speaking about this whole notion of decolonization? I think if we are true to ourselves and we want to understand the rationale of this whole process of decolonization, I think it will actually give us a good way of looking ahead, or also thinking of even reweighting the name decolonization, because I think, like my previous speaker, organizations in Ethiopia, if you talk of decolonizations, they were not colonized, so they don't understand what decolonization is all about. So we may need to relook the term decolonization. Are we talking about localization? That's why I was saying that I would need to understand the rationale, as in, why are we discussing this? Is this because of the fact that we are thinking that the donors are influencing our funding systems, our managing processes, our reporting? So I think we may need to even reweight the term, because you see, like before, when I actually say to you my definition of decolonization, it actually has got a lot of political influence. If you go to the African Union Commission and you say decolonization, it looks into the whole notion of the whole political element of it all. So what's the rationale, what's the background? So we may also need to reterm that word decolonization, and look at other terms that may mean what we want to do. Is it strengthening localization? Is it making sure that donors don't influence the way we manage our system? So I think, for me, we need to relook deeper, relook the term itself, and be sure as in what are we really referring to. Then from there, look at the reasons why we want to actually decolonize, and then from there, come up with solutions in terms of how do we manage it. I think we need to be real with ourselves in terms of what do we mean by decolonization, because for me, I think it's a very heavy word. It comes in with lots of issues, economically, politically, socially. So we need to be really sure. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much. And like Moses highlighted, we need to define and understand it ourselves. And if we have to redefine or choose a different word that suits our context, the contextualization of it is also something that we have to look at. I'll take the last hand. I have Kabiwe, and after that, we will have a short break, a short 3-minute break, whilst we take all your inputs and reorganize it. And then we will come back and go into breakout groups. And in our breakout groups, I want us to go more deeper. So when we are saying that we want to have a conversation about defining what decolonization is, what do we want to talk about? What are the things that we want to talk about under each of them? When we want to talk about realization, self-actualization, and defining who we are, what are the things that we want to focus our conversation on? Do we want to talk about issues about gatekeeping? What are the things that we want to talk about? So when we come back from the break, we'll go into breakout groups. You choose which group that you want to go and have the conversation, and then you have the latitude to move around from one group to the other, just to share your insights and your thoughts. So let me take the last hand from you, Kabiwa, and then we will go for a short 3-minute break. Hello. Okay, I think we've lost him, unfortunately. Please, when you come back, kindly share your... Okay, you are with us. Please continue.
Hello.
Continue. Okay, that is Mohammed. Mohammed, please, you have the floor. Yes,
Okay,
continue.
thank you so much. Yeah, on my own side, I just want to see ourselves as a people that are trying to put things in a proper shape. And if we are thinking of this concept, and one, we need to realize and consider ourselves as where and how are we going to do it. If that's the case, because when you look at our own connection in Africa with the European and the Western world, it's very deep and difficult, because they see us as a place of reaping for them to come and harvest and reach themselves and try to make themselves well living, places. Whereas they get the raw material from Africa. For instance, my own country, Sierra Leone, we are mining diamonds, rutile, bauxite. All those things will be traveling to the Western world. And what and how they are doing these things, nobody will tell you. But like the foundation of Africa, how was it, and how did they trying to go about it, in terms of our leaders? Because these are the people that's supposed to bring up all these things. But in our area as organization, I'm just wondering if we are trying to get involved these leaders to bring them on board as a key factors to try and seek the interest of our own natural things, our own people and our countries, to be more self-reliant instead of depending on these people. But like, we cannot keep them off, because when you look at the finances, as one speaker said, but like how you decolonize somebody and you try to get everything from them, then if Sierra Leone want to print money, for instance, we have to go to UK and pay money for them to print our currencies. It is done? No, because if you said you give a birth to a child, this child become 18 or 20 years of age, he or she needs to go and do whatever he wanted to do by him or herself. It cannot just depend when he or she needs money to go and buy cake or whatever she or him want to buy. You need to come to mom or dad and say, I need $2 or $5 to go and buy myself dresses. Come on. This is a big thing, or like a broader term that we need to work on and try to actually work into the proper structures. So thank you. That's my own input.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mohammed. And there is a lot of interesting insights coming in the chat. So please also be looking at the chat. There are so much in the chat that we also going to help us. There's this conversation that, yes, we need to define it, but let's not also get stuck in the definition. And then let's ask the question, what are we doing wrong? What should be changed? And how should we change it? And why should we change it? So that's also a wonderful feedback coming in the chat. I will take the last hand, Gladys. Politically, after Gladys, I will not take anybody's hand again. So Gladys, just a few minutes, kindly share your insights, and then we will have a short break. We will return on top of the hour, wherever you are, and then continue. Gladys, over to you. Hello, Gladys. Can you hear us?
Oh, okay, thank you so much, Nancy.
Yes.
I would hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm just saying that the conversation we are driving now is very, very important. For me, it's a case of doing the same thing, even with the influence of innovation, ideation, and technology, yet Africans remains the same. If we say we are being colonized, and you look at who colonized you as against yourself, the divide in the development is far, 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 far apart. What is keeping us from not matching up? If they colonize us to, okay, they share their culture, their history, or we intertwine our culture, our way of life, why are we still far, far underdeveloped as Africa? With all of the natural resources, which are still where we are. See our elections, for example. Democracy may not be something that Africa started off from the beginning. It was sold or it was given to us during colonization, but yet we are not getting it right. Elections after elections, you see a lot of things happen. If it is not election buying, a lot of people die in the process. See our level of development. See the brain drain. People go out of Africa and become better. Yet there's no plowback into the African country. So how much of this influence have really registered in Africa as it is? So the big question will be, what do we really want as Africans? We have to, just as Madeleine said, we should know ourselves. What do we really want as Africa? Is it AIDS, or we want to do self-development? For example, the Gatwick Airport in UK is owned by a Nigerian. But you come to Nigeria, you cannot find a very solid, fantastic airport. And meanwhile, the economy of that country is blossoming because of somebody who has gone. I think the mindset is like, okay, I do it better there, and I cannot do it better in Africa. So we need to begin to change our narrative and start telling ourselves the truth as African. Whether you are colonized or not, you need to find your purpose. You need to find yourself as a people, as a nation, as a world, as a continent, as a whole, and begin to realign, change the narrative. So that's just my thought. We as Africans are our issues. We need to tell ourselves the truth that it is time to come out of that jinx. You have learned a lot, even technology-wise. You have super Africans doing well. So why not turn that into gold mine? You already have just turned. Let us begin to see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gladys. And I love the energy and the conversation that is coming in. And we will have more time to discuss that when we go into our breakout group. So let's take a short break. And it's on top of the hour now. Let's come back in the next 5 minutes. And then when we come back, we will be going into a breakout groups. You choose the group that you want to go into, and then let's have the conversation about some of the things that we want to discuss and how we want to discuss it. And then we will come back and have a reflection about that. Thank you so much. Get up from your seat, walk around, get a glass of water, because the conversation is really interesting and we need you here with your full energy. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Right?
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Okay, so we have set up a couple of breakout groups, which we will open for you to go and choose which room you want to talk about. And the idea of the breakout groups is these are conversations that we want to really have. So we want to have deep conversations. So we are going to spend 30 minutes in each group to discuss each of the topics. So there are several of them. When we open the breakout groups, you see several topics. You choose the group that you feel comfortable and you would like to go and have a conversation with the team in there. And in the group, we want you to own the space. So please choose somebody to facilitate the conversation so that you can end in 30 minutes. I know it can be really interesting, but then choose somebody who can help you to have the conversation in 30 minutes. And then secondly, have somebody that can help you take the notes, because we want to have the insights. So my colleague Mabel will come to the room, or will share a Google link in the chat. That's where we are going to put our insights. So when you go to the link, you see your topic that you are in the group, and then you can put your insights in there. So it's 30 minutes. Kindly go to the room, and then let's have a good conversation. And then we will come back and see where we are at, and we will discuss how to take these things forward. So I am opening up the groups now.
A society that disappoints you so much.
And it's 30 minutes. So you should be seeing the breakout group popping up on your screen. You have to scroll down and you see the different rooms. And then on the far right corner, there is a blue button that says join. You click on any of the rooms that you feel connected to, that you want to have a conversation around with colleagues. Click join and it will take you to the room. And on the screen is also
I'm projecting my screen just in case anybody's having challenges with seeing the rooms. Sorry. This is how
So
it appears
please
on your screen.
find some time, look at your screen. There's a breakout to has pop up. We want you to choose where you want to have the conversation. Just go down. The topics are there. On your right corner, there's a blue button called join. Click on it and it will take you to the room. Let's do that. If you're having any challenges, just raise your hand, tell us where you want to get to, and then we will help you get there. Thank you. I see some people moving.
They are displaced to exist because they can no longer function because they don't have the money. Those are my lights.
That's really insightful. Thank you so much. Anyone from Group 2 who would like to add to this? Yes, Seneki.
Okay, thank you very much, Nancy. I think just to add on, we also spoke about the notion of capacity. I think it was interesting to reflect that when we reflect of capacity, we need to be very careful when you say NGOs, don't have capacity. Capacity to do what? Because the NGOs are the ones that actually write proposals. They know their context. The fact that they group together and they actually write proposals, which means they have the capacity. They know what exactly they are doing. So I think what was important was that we need to be very careful and specific when we talk about capacity, because NGOs do have the capacity to manage their organizations, but the capacity now that they don't have is the funding capacity. The technical capacity somehow, in terms of strengthening reports, strengthening M&E systems, and so forth. Those are governance, issues that donors support us with. But however, NGOs do have the capacity to manage their own organizations. And then we also spoke about the notion of dependency, and we spoke about the fact that we're obviously existing in an economic crisis. It's not business as usual at the moment. So obviously, in terms of dependency, yes, we depend on donors because we actually have climate change. We've got all these problems. We're talking about migration, poverty. So definitely we depend on donors. But however, donors, obviously, some of them, they change, tables. They bring in, specific requirements, and then half the line they actually, change requirements. And one person also spoke about the fact that they even take over. Some of them, they come in, they actually look like they are funding, but however, they take over some of the programs that NGOs are running, leaving them dependable. I mean, what do you call it, in a crisis. Thank you very much, Nancy.
Thank you very, very much for adding that. So I will go to Group 3. So Group 3 talked about understanding the whole concept about decolonization, neocolonizing, power dynamics, and the whole thing about the definition. So anyone from Group 3 would like to share?
I'm happy to share, but I just need to know that I've got
Yes.
permission. I want to know that I've got permission from the group. Just need a thumbs up from the group, really. Thank you, Elder Martin. Okay. Paul, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. All right. So largely it was, in terms of decolonization, the two major points were to unlearn the current ways of doing things and to really shift towards global South methods to access our local solutions, really. And I think the other thing was we need to really ensure that we have time to explore our local technology that has existed long before colonization. But also to trust that our own solutions, so we can reduce our reliance on donor funding and solutions, that we have what we need. It might not look the same, but it has worked for thousands and thousands of years. And we just need to trust ourselves. I think the only thing I want to add to that is that we need to have elders rather than people who are in positions of power. I think people in positions of power, they're going to do for themselves. If they're elders, they will do for others. So that's my complaint. Thank you, group, for your patience and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the group want to add to this? Oh, Anderson.
Sorry.
Yes, Patrick.
Is that group 2 that the last person just spoke about?
No, that was group 3.
Group 3.
Would you like to share for group 2?
No. Actually, because I didn't see Anderson in group 3 in our discussion, so I was wondering, so I became confused. In group 3, we were actually went there understanding and defining neocolonialism and colonialism and power dynamics, and I will identify that for us to really, have a headway in all this whole idea of decolonization, we need to understand it, because if you do not understand it, we are not making any headway. Because I can see that some of us also too, we are accepting that theory of self-defeatism, that we cannot do without the West, we cannot do without the donors, we cannot do without this. And so we talked about forms of coloniality. There is a coloniality of power, and there is, of course, we know the power matrix, the power imbalance, and there is coloniality of being. And in coloniality of being, we are talking about the power of whiteness as a mode of being, the power of whiteness, white supremacy. If it's not coming from the white, if it's not coming from the Oyinbo people, it cannot be authentic. And that is, so that's why, you see Africans also too, they want to change the color of their skin because anything that is white is better. So that's the coloniality of being, power of whiteness as a mode of being in the world. So we need to acknowledge that because they play out every day, we don't know. And also too, there is coloniality of knowledge. I asked a question in our group. I said, all of us, what did you study in the university? What are you practicing now? Africans, our education is still terribly colonial. We do not have markets for what we study in the university. That's coloniality of knowledge. And the worst of all is the coloniality of imagination. And that is what I'm getting from us here, because the power, the white supremacy has actually made us to think, or to think that we cannot do without the West. So our imagination has been warped to the point that if we do not get donors, we cannot survive as civil society. We cannot beat the West. We cannot we don't have the power. We don't have, so we can't imagine out of the present situation that coloniality has made us as Africans. So this is the worst of all. Until we begin to reimagine, and I think that is the whole idea of decolonization, to reimagine of something different from whiteness. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that. That was really, really insightful. Okay, so let's then move to the group that talked about how to really practice this, and also talked about self-actualization, self-realization of what decolonization is about. So group 4. Anyone from group 4? Oh, I think that should be the group that Anderson spoke about, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, okay. Thank you very much for that clarity. So we can then move to the group that's also discussed. I know there were a few people in that group, the conversation about Southern organization leading this conversation. Is there anyone who were able to discuss something in that group, the group 5, limited opportunities for Southern organization to lead the conversation? Were there anyone in the group that would like to share? Okay, so yes, Magdalene. Please, you have the floor. Madeleine, can you hear us? You can now speak, please.
Okay, okay. Remind me the topic again. The South whatever, please. Let me get it right.
Yes. Yeah, so the topic was limited opportunity for Southern organization to lead the conversation. That was the topic of the group.
Okay, and I believe that when you're talking about these certain organizations, you're talking about Africans, organizations that are being headed by Africans. All right, if that is the case, remember I have earlier contributed on self-actualization and self-realization. Now, you cannot lead what you don't know. Right? You must have adequate knowledge of something before you be able to project it in. Now, if Africans will come home and find out whom they are, then you can lead a discussion on it. If I tell you, like, I give an instance in my previous group, I said, when there is a meeting for landlords, if you're not a landlord, you will not be able to participate in that meeting. So Africans will be able to head discussions or head organizations or lead in the talking if they are discussing.
Sorry, we are losing you.
What is paramount in their area? You'll be able to ask me. Yeah. Okay.
You are back.
If
Please
someone,
continue. Yes.
all
you
right.
can.
If someone is coming to my village, the person will ask me, please lead me to the direction of your village. A foreigner cannot come to my village and know my village straight. So I will take the lead. So Southerners or Africans can take a lead in these discussions. If they've been able to find out whom they are, then is at that point they can say, okay, tell us about yourself. But in a situation whereby they think that what another person is better, then they will be following the person and neglect whom they are. So the first thing first, Africans should be able to find out who they are and find a way. By the time you begin to talk about yourself, someone will get interested. Please tell me more about yourself. Those things you have. Now, it is at that point, the person will have the floor and talk. This is the only way Southerners can lead in the organizations. I don't know if I made my point right.
Yes, you made it very, very clear. And thank you so much for that. That was really very insightful. Anyone to add to that in the group? If not, we can move to the group 6. That is about lack of genuine commitments or tokenism. Anyone in that group would like to share? Group 6. Veronica, are you sharing? Because your mic is muted.
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes. So, during the discussion, the highlight was on the original intention for decolonization, which was not out of genuine concern for the development of the nation, but we see most of our leaders, take for example, Sierra Leone as a case study, the reason that we decided to be decolonized was because of personal gains. And this has set a bad precedence, which is responsible for our current state of affairs, which is crooked. So it's not like there is not a way for us to develop as a nation, but because of certain sets of people don't want to move out, they just want to be corrupt, to enjoy the gains of the country. So there is an issue. So that's why, if not, why does it happen that whenever leaders assume office, they don't want to move out when their time is up? So I think that's one of the issues that causes lack of genuine. Yeah, that's one of the issues for this topic here.
Thank you very much, Veronica. And you can please share it in the Google Doc, or you can put it in the chat so that we can capture these insightful issues that were discussed. Anyone from that group that want to also add to what Veronica has shared?
Yeah, Mohammed. Yeah,
continue, Mohammed.
Yeah, the thing we also share is the foundation base, yeah, because it's caused a lot of issues and problem within the organizations, yeah, because the genuine concern was not there for them to gain the independency from the different countries in Africa. That's caused the problem of even the coming organizations for tomorrow will not have the proper way to handle things well because the intention was not genuine. And if that's happened within the foundation, I'm telling you, we'll get a breakdown of houses every day, every time, every year because the mission not being mentioned well from their own plans. Yeah. So it's because we look at the mission and if they are traveling from here to America, England, they go there to learn to see the difference from Sierra Leone or maybe Ghana, other countries, and with England or America. So if you come here, you as a leader, you have to implement those things. You as an organization director or chief executive officer, you have to implement those things. But like if that is not tell to the organization or to the country itself, that means your intention wasn't genuine. And if that's continue, we are trying, but like we see ourselves, it's much more time for us to reach the achievement of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. That was really, really good. So we'll go to the last group, group 7, and I think group 7 talked about why now, and do we really need to reword the term decolonization? Why are we having this conversation now? Anyone in that group would like to share something with us?
Okay, Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Gladys. We can continue.
My group, we had a very good discussion and I was unanimously asked to give the feedback, and I hope I'm going to do justice to the team. Why now? The conversation was really robust. I have put down some of the points that taken out on the Google sheet, but let me just walk us through it. Some of the things we looked at is it's a function of evolution, whether we're changing the nomenclature, the phrase of it, the issue is that it's a function of our evolution. And that's the reason why the conversation is beginning to reverberate. At some point, Eva Joyce, one of the group member, brought back to our consciousness that this conversation is really not a new concept. It has been there, but in a different way. We might look at it as from the time of the liberation struggle of Africa, we've been talking about freedom, and what is decolonization is to actually take us out of what has been sold to us or shared with us. So it's a function of evolution, like I said. Also, the fact that Africans' life pattern have been fashioned around the West a lot. Why not come back to where or who we are? It's also the narrative is also a thin line between decolonization and deglobalization. Yeah, we have learned a lot. Technology has come, intermarriage has come, interreligion has come. Are we going to just throw that out? Some people are comfortable with this new concept. Not that they have thrown away or forgotten their actual culture, but they have fused it to have a better way they want to live. But then again, what are those inherent factors that is not making us move or grow as a people, as a continent? We need to understand that. There's also the need for an alignment between the conversation of the global north and the global south. And from our conversation, it is said that the global north has been championing this conversation, but the agenda might be slightly different from what the Global South is bringing forth. So there needs to be this alignment for us to actually have a unison of the discussion. Africa has also has this weak local philanthropy when it comes to the money part of it. The philanthropic drive of Africa is so low. We do have great Africans who are businessmen, Mongols who are doing so well in their business spaces in what they do, but yet, what is the philanthropic drive? That's why the overdependence on aid is very high. So it's also time for us to take ownership of our local process so that the eventual outcome can certainly be something that we can manage and control. Then the conversation, like I said, it's not new. It's evidence that it's coming from the liberation struggle. So it's not a new conversation as to say why now, but why is it very, very clear or predominant now? That's what we should stop talking more and start beginning to have action together. Regardless of the agenda of the Global North, we need to show present what are we bringing to the table, especially as civil society organization in the Global South. What is this strong voice that we are putting together? And we're always demanding relevance, a seat at the UN. For you to be taken seriously, you have to show that you are serious with what you are doing. So we need to start doing things rightly, and so that when you have that seat, it's on a fair ground. Then the last one we just talked about, there's need for us to go beyond the quest of wanting more money for implementation of projects. We want more money, but rather take action of our conversation and follow it through. I don't know if I did a good job, my group members, Mr. Alawale and Eva Joyce, we had Anu, we had Sandra with Chiamaka. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm in my office, so you can please understand with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. I think it was amazing. Anyone from the group would like to add to what Gladys shared? Oh, Gladys did justice to that. Okay. Oluwawale.
Yes, so thank you. And I want to say she did justice to that. But I really want to touch, with your permission, on very critical points that I observed, if you permit me.
Yes, please.
Okay, so somebody talked earlier about knowledge, the coloniality of knowledge and coloniality of power. And I think those two are very, very important. They reinforce each other. I mean, those who control power controls knowledge. Those who control knowledge also control power. And I think it is very, very important for us to understand this relationship and to ask ourselves the question whether we are actually ready for decolonization. And that's one question we have to put to our conscience. I mean, I'm an academic, and if you don't publish in high impact journal, 70, 80, 90% of which are in Western countries, you don't get promoted. That is my institution, not Western institution. And so we have different stories and narratives like that. So are we actually ready? I hope that at the end of this meeting, we can identify practical steps that we will now begin to do in our respective constituencies to drive the decolonization process. And that also brings me back to the second point on concept. One of the ways by which Western countries and institutions control knowledge and power is through concept and framing. They frame agenda through media organizations and so on and so forth. So for instance, when you talk about and that's why we have to be careful, when you talk about we don't have capacity or we have low capacity, that has been the narrative. So even our researchers as scholars focus too much on the weaknesses. Oh, that we are poor, we are backward, we need this. So it makes us look only as beneficiaries rather than as co-investors and co-creators. And therefore, we are not relating on the basis of equality. Whereas equality in our partnership should be self-evident in our relationship. And then I think the last point, yes, while I agree that this is the first conversation, it's important for us to understand ourselves. But I also think that this is not something that we can accomplish all by ourselves alone. Maybe in subsequent meetings like this, we need to bring the others also to the table. We have to deconstruct knowledge, within ourselves. We have to, But those others, because in the globalized world, we are not delinking. This is not deglobalization. So they have to understand our perspective, so we have to bring them to the table. I don't know how the organizers may be able to do it, but I think it's an important.
Thank you very much for that. And I think what you even said takes us to what we are going to discuss as next steps. How do we take it?
Can I make a contribution to that?
Okay, briefly, yes.
All right. So with what the topic says, now have we actually started doing something? Or are we just talking about decolonization? If someone is hungry, you don't quench the hunger by shouting, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. No, you have to go start cooking as to quench the hunger. Then another thing we have to do is shifting of focus. Everybody is focusing, or the international body, everybody is focusing on money, how to chase money. Now, if Africa want to actually decolonize, they should have a shift of how to grab this money, how to grab this dollar. Now they should shift a focus on reorienting their people, beautifying the heritage, the cultural heritage, talking about the oneness. Am I here?
Yes,
hello?
You are here. We can hear you. Yes, continue. We can hear you.
There's going to be a change of focus from what initially has been the focus of trying to have the white first. No, there's going to be a reorientation and say, we should not make our focus again, the money, our focus. We should make of ourselves, our heritage, our focus. If we do it this way, I think if we start doing something and start doing it this way, realizing who we are, I think there should be a great way forward. My contribution then.
Thank you very, very much, Madeleine. And I think from the conversation just today, there are a lot of questions that has also come out, which means there is more that we have to talk about. And there was an interesting questions that Chinere put on the chat and was talking about knowledge systems, like critical questions that we need to reinterrogate, questions that Oluwa Wale has shared, Madeleine, and all of us, all the things that we shared, there are still more. So we can still have to discuss this more. And that takes us to the next steps. How do we take this forward? We want to continue having this conversation, but then we want to have this conversation within our own pace, and also leading the same conversation. So I will hand over to my colleague Mabel, and she will just have a short discussion with us on how frequent do we want to have this conversation, because there's a tall list of discussion that we still need to have. And then we will also open it up. We want you to lead, we can organize, but then we want you to be the moderators. We want you to be the facilitators. We want you to be the panelists that will help us to get responses to some of this. And if we want others to be in the space, this is our space. If you want to invite the donors, if you want to invite INGOs to be in the space, it's also for us to make that decision. And then in our subsequent session, we know that this is a space that we want to invite others. And when we are organizing, we can do as we have requested. So Mabel, can you take us through how we are taking the next steps, and then how people would like to also contribute to the process? Don't
forget Madeleine Renzi hands, please.
Yes,
I'm done. The hand has been there.
Madeleine, your hand should be hurting by now. Okay.
How do I remove this hand?
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. And we are putting in the efforts to make this happen. I don't know if Dylan is still here. Dylan, would you like to maybe say one or two things before we close? I think it would be great to hear from you.
Mabel, thank you. Can you hear me all? Yes, good.
Yes.
Just a big note to say thank you to you all for the brilliant conversation. I've been on the sidelines listening to the conversation and also to the chat. And I want to say how encouraged I am, because I think you're starting to model the change that we are all trying to push for, right? That's the whole point of this conversation. So all to say thank you. And I think Peace Direct and WACSI are committed to supporting this conversation evolving in whichever way the group thinks is important. So we will be debriefing ourselves. We will have a conversation about what we can offer. But bearing in mind what Mabel said, that this is your conversation. So if we can be allies to you and we can support that process, we will, and consider us your friends and your allies as well. So thank you again for that opportunity to sit in and to be part of this great conversation, and looking forward to the next one. So let's build this momentum, people. Let's keep this going. Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of you, our friends and allies. We are looking forward to continuing this conversation. Please, we've shared our email address in the chat section. You can always write to us at any point in time. We are open. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day. It's been great having you around.
Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye.
Please switch on your cameras. Just say hi to anybody. Wave,
Thank you.
smile.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Finally done 30th of November. But now the second,
Bye.
so that's fine. The second of
Oh, we are not
December,
seeing
you're
your
okay.
face, Gladys. Thank you.
First activity, we get cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3. So the second activity, 1 hour.